So we have endothelial cells. Endothelial cells are cells that forms the inner lining of cardiovascular system and lymphatic system structures. So by its name alone, it's like a cousin of epithelial cells, but since its name is endothelial, so it means na makikita natin siya sa loob, which means sa inner portion. Now for endothelial cells, it's only a single layer. So single layer lang yun sila, and usually they are found in blood vessels and lymph vessels. And endothelial cells plays an important part for angiogenesis. They also regulate movement of macromolecules, gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide, and fluids between the blood and the surrounding tissues. Since they are found in the inner lining of blood vessels or lymph vessels, that is why one of their function is for the regulation of the transfer of gases, for example, or fluids. So, yun yung other functions nila. And also, they help to regulate blood pressure. Now, endothelial cells might be helpful, but it might play a part also in causing tumors or cancer. Since they are forming blood vessels, there might be a case na too much ang ilang pag-make og new blood vessels. And that pagbuhat nila og new blood vessels might create tumor na no or parang clump. So maka-cause na siya og tumor, which is very dangerous for a human's health. So if you can observe the illustration here, so this would be the blood vessel. Ito yung blood vessel. Then ito yung outer lining. So ito yung outer lining. Then ito yung inner lining. So ito yung endothelial cells. Ito yung parang light blue na color na cells found in the inner lining of the blood vessel. So they are exposed to the blood. So as the blood passes the blood vessel, they receive those oxygen na gina-transport ni blood, particularly the erythrocytes, and they will help in transferring those oxygen to the cell na kailangan ng oxygen. And also, they will be responsible in transferring carbon dioxide from the cells to the blood, and the blood will carry the carbon dioxide back to the lungs para ma-exhale natin. So we have sex cells. The sex cells are unique because they are the only cells that can be used for reproduction. So we have what we call somatic cells. Somatic somatic cells. These are cells na non-reproductive, which means we cannot use them to create a new organism. So somatic cells, for example, are skin cells, muscle cells, and so those are somatic. While sex cells, we have gametes. This will be used to create an entire organism. So sex cells are different for the male and of course different from the female, but again, both of them will be used as reproductive cells. Each cells contains 23 chromosomes so that they can add up to 46 para makabuo ng an entire organism, because the normal number of chromosomes for the normal number of chromosomes for a human is 46. 46 yun siya dapat. So dapat 23 ang chromosome ng egg and 23 yung chromosome ng sperm. And that is why iba din yung division nila. So for them, sa sex cells, they tend to divide through meiosis, while for somatic cells, They tend to divide via mitosis. So mitosis for somatic cells, while meiosis naman for sex cells. This is to ensure na yung number of chromosomes nila should be half the normal number of chromosomes. So for the male sex cells, we call them the sperm. The sperm are motile. Motile, which means they're capable of movement. So pwede sila mag-move. And also, they have a long tail-like projection called the flagellum. So mayroong tail yung sperm, and that will be used to for locomotion for sperm. In terms of size, it's relatively small compared to the egg cell, if you can observe sa illustration natin. In terms of number naman, mas madami siya compared to the egg cell. So for females naman, we call them egg cells. For egg cells, they are relatively large compared to sperm cells, and they are non-motile. Non-motile, which means they are not capable of movement compared to the sperm. And isa pa, in terms of number, females, when they are young or kung ano pa siya, newly born na female, they contain 1 million egg cells. But as they grow older, particularly pag mag-reach na sila ng puberty, they lose 1,000 eggs each year. So, mo nang as the time goes by, magkalisod na og produce ang female, kay every year nag-decrease ang ilang number of egg cells. And as they reach also puberty, almost every month they do menstrual cycle. This is to cleanse their reproductive system, no, once their matured egg cells are not used. So para mahinlo siya, every month na sila menstrual cycle. So for the male sex cells, we have the sperm, and this is the structural components. These are the structural components of the sperm cell. It's divided into 4 parts. We have head, the mid piece, the tail, and the end piece. So yun yung 4 parts. In sa head, we have acrosome. Acrosome is a layer that is used to penetrate the egg cell. Then we can also find there the nucleus. And of course, we have the plasma membrane that protects all of the parts ng sperm. Yung red thin line or yung outline na makita nyo dyan, that's the plasma membrane. The yellow one is the acrosome. Then yung dark gray or something, that's the nucleus. While yung itim dyan, that might be the nucleolus na. Then sa mid-piece na part, we have the centriole. Centriole connects the head to the mid-piece. Yung yellow colored na part dito sa gitna. That's the centriole. Then yung mga light yellow colors na nakapaligid doon sa mid-piece, these are the mitochondria. The mitochondria, of course, are used to provide energy. And since sperm cells needs energy to move or to swim, thus they need a lot of mitochondria. So maraming mitochondria naka-align dito sa mid-piece. Then we have the terminal disc. The terminal disc signals the end of the mid-piece. Ito na yung end ng mid-piece, yung terminal disc. Then we have also the tail and the end piece. The tail is actually made up of a filament. So it's a long filament, and this is used for the movement of the cells. So the eggshell filament moves in a whip-like motion. Whip-like motion, so warag latigo, and that motion drives the sperm to move forward. Then we have the end piece. Now for the sperm, a healthy sperm should have an oval-shaped head, and a long tail. I will answer that question later, Miss Alcantara. So,
Yes po. Sige po.
yan. So, the eggshell filament moves moves in a whip-like motion. Then it should be long, yung tail niya dapat long siya. Then yung head nila dapat oval in shape. So there are millions of sperm cell na ma-produce ng male. So ang male, once they reach puberty, they can actually produce up to 15 million to 30 million sperm cells. And out of those millions of sperm cells, there might be a possibility that some of those sperm cells have problems in their shape or in their structures. So, what are those problems na possible makita sa mga sperm? So, these are mga abnormalities of the sperm, particularly on their shape and structure. So, we have normal. Ito yung normal shape. This one. Then, there are sperm cells na medyo malaki yung ulo. Their head is relatively large compared to the normal. There are some naman na maliit yung ulo. May iba na dalawa ang ulo. May iba na dalawa din yung tail or body. Then there are some sperms also na medyo long ang head or elongated ang head. Then may iba din na rough. Then there are also sperm cells na may problem yung kanilang midpiece. So out of millions of sperm cells, it's normal to see this kind of abnormal nga sperm cells. Okay, normal lang siya, makita natin na siya. Because out of those millions, only one can penetrate naman the egg cell. Now, what will happen to the sperm cell if ganito yung kanilang shape? They might face difficulty in reaching the egg cell. So, maunahan sila swim sa mga normal. So, kung abnormal ang shape ng sperm cell, they might have difficulties swimming or moving forward. So, dili sila makaabot dito sa ilang goal na egg cell. Okay, so a normal amount of sperm na ma-produce sa isa ka healthy na male should be within 15 to 30 million approximately. And if magbaba pa ka ato, it means baog ang isa ka lalaki. Okay, so dapat makaproduce na siya. In every ejaculation of male, in every release of male, maka-release taog 15 or 30 million na sperm. That. So, daghan na siya and it is very small, but you can actually observe them under the microscope. So, unsay nawong ana nila pag nasa microscope. So, inani lang dagway, pero daghan na sila, di sila nani kagagmay. But inana, usually inilang itsura. Yan. So that's how they swim and that's how they move forward papunta doon sa egg cell. Now for the
Sir,
female,
going back sa
yes.
unsa to sa meiosis ug mitosis, sir?
Mitosis and meiosis is the cell division process wherein si mitosis divides the cell but they contain the same amount of chromosome. Si meiosis naman, they tend to divide also the chromosome number.
Sir, thank you.
Okay, for the sperm cell, balikan ako yung sperm cell. There might be a chance na makapenetrate ang abnormal, but it's rare. So it's rare lang na siya. So what will happen there is that there might be some problems with the child later on or the egg will not be fertilized if ganun yung mangyari. So very rare lang na siya. Kasi if you're going to check it, your cells or ipa-sperm analysis ni mga sperm cells, gina-make sure that dapat healthy ang sperm cell mo nang pag kanang mga sitawani ka ng mga couples na mag-adtog fertility clinic. So they tend to check their egg cells and sperm cells kung healthy ba, kung normal ba, para healthy pod ang baby or na sila possible na fertilized egg na may tabo. So for egg cells naman, out of those thousands of egg cells na ma-produce ng female, ng female, only one of them can be fertilized. So once na dili siya ma-fertilized, motong ilabay siya or igawa siya sa body ng female through menstruation. But if merong merong intercourse, so the sperm cell will find that egg cell and penetrate it para makasulod siya doon sa loob para ma-fertilize ang egg. So, once na ma-fertilize na ang egg ng female, mag-meet kasi yan sila sa fallopian. Then once na ma-fertilize na ang egg, mag-travel ang egg. Dili sila maka-move but the cells na naa sa lining sa uterus ang mag-move sa egg cell padulong dito sa uterine wall. So doon siya ma-implant. Doon mag-develop yung egg. So i-meet lang na siya ni sperm cell dito dapit sa may fallopian, then they travel or they move the egg kung wala siya bayanihan ba nga i-gina-move nila ang egg padulong dito sa uterine wall para dito siya ma-implant. So once that happens, doon na mag-start nag-evolve ang cell, maging zygote na siya, maging embryo na siya. Then 9 months later, may mo na siyang full baby or fetus kung wala pa siya nagawas. So, for the egg cells of female, it's crucial na isa lang dapat ka sperm ang makapenetrate. Kasi, remember, for the number of chromosomes of humans, dapat 46 lang. So, saan galing yung 46? 23 from the sperm and 23 from the egg. Once mosobra ni siya or makulangan ni siya nga number, it might cause mga syndrome like Down syndrome, sa pa to mga problems with regards to genetic abnormalities, no? So, If mosobra, of course, na po na yung problem. Kung makulangan, na po na yung problem. So, for example, we have 1 egg and 1 sperm. Then, mosulod po lang isa ka sperm. So, pila na tanan? 69 nakabuok. So, that's sobra na compared to the normal number of chromosome. So, it's important that the egg should be penetrated only by a single cell, a single sperm cell. So, ano yung ginagawa ng egg cell? So, they release protection in the form of follicle cells para dili na sila ma-penetrate sa other sperm kay namangga po yung sperm na mo try og sulod. Kay attracted man sila sa egg. So, try sila og sulod. But once na nanay makasulod nga sperm dito, so mag-release na sila og mag-produce na sila follicle cells para maprotektahan nila ilang cell from the other sperm cell. So, what will happen to the other sperm cell na nasa sulod? So, mamatay sila later on due to the acidic environment sa loob ng female. Okay, so question doon kanina, what happened to the sex cells ng mga sterile? Bakit hindi sila maka-reproduce? Sterile or non-sterile? Non-sterile, it doesn't mean na di sila makaproduce. Makaproduce sila but the number is small. For example, for males, so ang ginaproduce lang nila ng sperm kay medyo konti lang. So, mo to siyang maglisod sila o reproduce.
Okay, sir.
Then, yun. So, the sperm and the egg creates or fertilizes. Once na ma-fertilize ng egg, they will become an embryo, a zygote, then if fetus die after. For the twins, we have two kinds of twins, fraternal and identical. When we say fraternal, ito yung hindi magkamukha. Itong anak ni pangalan ito ni anak ni Aga, kambal may nato ito, og ni Zoren. So those are fraternal twins. So ang fraternal twins naman, dili sila identical kay duha ka egg ang na-fertilize. So duha ka egg, then naapoy duha ka sperm. So mo to siyang fraternal twins. While yung identical twins are caused by the division of the fertilized egg. So naay isa ka sperm og naay isa ka egg. Then na-fertilize siya, then nag-divide sila. Munang maka-create og twins. So possible mag-divide sila twice or thrice para may mong triplets or 4 times para mag-quadruplets and so on and so forth. So depende na daw na siya sa
Ano kung mag-in vitro, sir, kay usually mga twins na, sir?
Kay ma-manipulate man nimo.
Manipulate tinuyo din na, sir.
Depende po na siya sa sa customer. Kung gusto niya nga twins, pwede ra pod. Kung gusto niya identical, pwede ra pod. Mangita lang siya suitable na sample.
So, saan na siya gina-form sa gawas ang
nana siya, in vitro o in vivo, di ba? So, si in vitro, kay sa Petri dish, sa Petri dish, but outside na siya. So, what will happen is that, gina-inject ang sperm cell diretso doon sa egg. While yung in vivo is, gina-introduce lang gi-introduce lang nato ang sperm cell o egg cell, then sila na bahala mag-meet. So for in vitro, if ever na natay sperm or makita nga, uy, kani siya nga kay, pwede siya mahimong twin. Possible na sila mahimong twin na. So, i-insert na nila doon sa egg cell. Then, yung egg cell, i-sulod dito sa babae. Particularly surrogate mothers or katong, di man surrogate, but those nga, pwede po ang normal lang nga mother nga, ano siya, magdala siya baby or kuan siya baby sa iyang tummy. So, i-introduce lang na dito sa sulod sa babae para dito mag-attach sa uterine wall.
Pwede po ba, sir, na ang babae ang mabaong?
Possible po siya. Kaya na ay mga cases na babae ang baog. But I don't really know the reason. Either genetic disorder siguro siya or due to lifestyle. But most of the times most of the cases man kay lalaki man ang kuan. But possible po ang babae. Kanang twins sa lahi gina siya. Kanang twins na gina siya sa lahi. So if possible na twins sa inyong family or sa inyong relatives, possible na some of your siblings or maybe you can produce twins.
So pwede din na dili one time, ano lang, sir? Pwede din na magbalik-balik.
Angon sa?
Maka-twins ka.
Dili.
Maka-twins na pod ka. Twins na pod ka.
Possible na siya. Possible na siya mahitabo. But for some, since genetic man na siya nga cause, so possible, for example, kung ang mama nimo walay twin, so ang mama nimo kay wala, tapos imong uncle kay naka-produce og twins. So sa imong uncle nga part mo follow tong sunod nga possible man ka twin. So ganun siya. But possible
Genetic,
ba? Ha?
Genetic mutation ng pag-twins?
Dili ko sure kung mutation ang reason for that. Dili ko sure kung mutation siya. Kung mutation siya, kung mutation ng good, mostly kay problem ang gawas kung mutation. So, dili ko sure kung mutation ba gid ang reason nga ng but there might be sequence of DNA na needed para inato ang ma-cause na maka-twins siya. So if this is the sequence of your DNA, so basig mo to ang reason nga maka-produce kag twins or even triplets. But then again, pwede man siya ma-manipulate sa lab. Kung gusto dyan yung mag-twins.
Okay, sir.
Then we have types of plant cells. So sa plant cells naman tayo, mas maliit lang yung types of plant cells compared to the types of animal cells. So for plant cells, it's actually divided into simple cells and complex cells. For simple cells, we have the parenchymal cells, collenchymal cells, and sclerenchymal cells. For complex cells naman, we have xylem and phloem. So itong 5 yung i-discuss natin. So parenchymal cells. The parenchymal cells are the major cells of plants. They make up the plant leaves and are responsible for the plant's metabolism and food production. So, si parenchyma, usually makita na siya all throughout the plant. There are some parenchymal cells na naga-contain og chlorophyll or chloroplast. So, those type of parenchymal cells are found on the leaves. Meron namang mga parenchymal cells na walang chloroplast, so they are usually found sa either roots or stem part ng plant. But mostly makita nato si parenchymal cell sa leaves because one of their function is for food production. So they are typically flexible compared to the other types of cells of plants, and their flexibility is due to their thin cell wall. So mas manipis yung cell wall nila compared to the other types of cell, and that makes them flexible. Then under the microscope, we can identify them because their shape is isodiametric. So in under the microscope, ito yung mga parenchymal cells. Yung bluish ang color. So that's the parenchymal cells. So if the parenchymal cells are seen on the leaves, we can actually divide them into two types. Okay, so again, if the parenchymal cells are found on the leaves, we can divide them into two types. We have the palisade parenchymal cell and the spongy parenchymal cell. So si palisade and spongy are both parenchymal cells, but they differ in their shape. So si palisade cells are usually cube-like or cube-like ang shape nila or parang rectangular shape. And they are usually seen sa upper epidermis part. So if you can observe, medyo compact sila. Nahadlok ko. Amin na kung naitaw sa akong likod. Naitaw po sa waiting room. Okay. So again, we can divide the parenchymal cells into two types. We have the palisade cells and the spongy cells. So for the palisade cells, they are usually compact, magkadikit, and they are usually seen sa upper portion ng leaf or the part of the leaf facing the sun. So bakit sila compact? This is to make sure that they get the amount of sunlight that they need for photosynthesis. Para walang masayang na light, so dapat compact sila so that each of them can receive photons from the light. Then, si spongy naman is usually found sa ilalim naman na part or doon sa ilalim na part ng leaf. And tinatawag silang spongy because they act like a sponge. No? Di ba pag sponge, but nga natong tubig, ma-absorb man niya ang tubig. Si spongy, itawag natin siya spongy because sa ilalim, they tend to absorb gases naman. So gases like carbon dioxide are needed by the plant to produce their food. So, kailangan may air spaces sila doon sa ilalim for them to be able to absorb gas. Kasi pag compact din sila, like the palisade, the gas might not be able to be absorbed. So, kailangan nila ng air spaces sa ilalim so that they can absorb gas. That is why also, nasa ilalim yung tinatawag natin na stoma or stomata, which is the parang entry point or exit point ng gases for plants. So yan yung reason why they have to differentiate it, yung dalawang parenchymal cells. So dito lang yan siya sa leaves. So wala nang spongy parenchymal cells or palisade parenchymal cells sa stem or roots. Sa leaf lang na siya makita. Okay, then we have collenchyma cells. The collenchyma cells are living, thin-walled cells. They occur in the hypodermis of stems and leaves. They are absent in monocots and roots. Monocots are plants na yung leaves nila are similar in pattern or parallel in pattern. An example of a monocot plant is coconut. So pa, grasses, for example. Basta, pag makita ninyo ang leaves nila nga similar ang pattern, kumbaga, inalim mo ang type of leaves na usually makita nato, right? So that's a dicot. So we will have a lesson on this one. So introduce lang ko. But if the leaf pattern looks like this one, parallel lang yung lines, that's a monocot. So collenchyma cells are not found sa mga monocot plants, and they cannot also be found sa roots. So walay collenchymal cells sa roots. Usually makita nato si collenchyma sa stem, and kung sa leaf naman, makita gyapon nato siya sa within the leaf and also doon sa petiole part. Yung connection gani ng leaf sa stem, di ba naman na siya inana nga part. Then ito yung petiole. So usually makita po nato na sila sa petiole. So dyan natin makikita yung mga collenchymal cells. Their function, they provide mechanical support, elasticity, and strength to the plant. So they are still elastic because they have thin cell walls. So pwede pa na sila ma-bend ang stem. But once na mag-grow old na ng mga plants, like for example, mag-create na sila bark, of course, dili na ma-fold. But those plants na medyo greenish pa yung stem, so pwede pa na sila ma-fold. Under the microscope, collenchymal cells are usually transparent ang color. So usually transparent ang color nila just like this. Then their shape is irregular. So if we can observe, medyo dili kuwari ilang shape. Dili same. Then if you can observe yung mga black region, those are actually intercellular spaces. So may spaces ang mga cells, thus making them elastic. And then we have the sclerenchyma cells. Si sclerenchyma cells naman are thick. So ito yung thick na cell for plants. Then they have no intercellular spaces. So if you can observe dito sa image natin, walang masyadong spaces in between the cells. Then yung reddish na part are actually their cell wall. So makapal yung cell wall nila. They occur in the hypodermis, the pericycle, secondary phloem and xylem of plants. And their function is mainly for mechanical support. So makita na sila sa hypodermis, which means after ng epidermis, so sa loob, makikita natin yan sila, and they are unique in terms of their observation sa microscope because they have red coloration na mag-react, the coloration reacts with the stain manggod. So makita na, maklaro dyan na to asa dito si collen, sclerin, oxyparin. So once na mag-reddish na ang color na niya, that might be the sclerenchymal cells. So these are just an illustration of sclerenchymal cells. So makita nato nga emphasize nila yung thick cell walls compared to the other na cells. So emphasize na nga thick na siya. So those are the simple cells. Then we have the complex cells. We have xylem and phloem. So if you can observe the image on the left side, so ito yung part or section ng stem ng isang plant. Then we can actually see there the parenchyma cells, the sclerenchyma cells, and the collenchymal cells. So ito yung, if you can observe yung bluish color na medyo malalaki, those are the parenchymal cells. Then yung mga maliliit naman is this area right here. These are the collenchymal cells. Then yung reddish na part, this one, are the sclerenchymal cells. But within that sclerenchymal cells, you can actually see xylem and phloem. So xylem and phloem acts as the vascular bundles for plants. So kung ang animals mayroong blood vessels, sa plants naman meron silang xylem and phloem. So the xylem and phloem varies in their shape, size, and their function. So si xylem, their main function is to conduct or transport water. Thus, they are also known as the water conducting cells. So the xylem moves the water from the roots and they move it forward, upward to the leaves kung saan needed sila to create or to do photosynthesis. So while xylem is the water conducting cells, yung phloem naman is the sugar conducting cells. So si phloem naman moves sugar na ma-produce sa leaves all throughout to the plant body. So siya yung magde-deliver ng food ng plants to the other parts of the plant body. So yan yung function ni phloem. That is why it's also called the sugar conducting cells. So dito sa illustration natin, makikita natin si xylem and phloem, which are already labeled. So ito mga malalaking bilog na to, these are the xylem. While yung mga smaller naman na mga yan, so these smaller ones are the phloem. So in terms of size, mas ma-differentiate nato na mas dako gyud si xylem compared to phloem. So xylem and phloem differ in their shape and size. So if you can observe, mas malaki si xylem and mas maliit si phloem. Then aside from that, one of their main difference as well is the presence of sieve plates. So ang sieve plates can only be found sa phloem. Ano yung mga sieve plates? These are the sieve plates. And these sieve plates have pores, and their purpose, ang purpose ng sieve plates is to regulate the movement of sugar. While si xylem, wala silang sieve plates. It's because their movement lang naman is upward and they need to take a lot of water na enough para ma-sustain niya ang plant for their photosynthesis na process. So, no need na sila ng ano kay kung naa sila yung sieve plate manggod, murag gamay ra nga or hina ang dagan sa tubig na needed man siya to create food. But for phloem, since food already processed na nga food lang ilang i-transport, so they need sieve plates or they have sieve plates to regulate the movement. Kay kung walay sieve plates, possible nga daghan ang maadto sa roots, possible pod nga daghan ang maadto sa stem, then unequal ang distribution sa food. So naay sieve plates present for that. In terms of their movement, si xylem kay one way. So upward lang gid na iyang movement. Its main goal is to push the water from the roots papunta sa leaves. While si phloem, two-way ang movement kasi they can move up, they can also move down. So possible sila maadto sa roots to provide roots with the food. Possible sila maadto sa other parts ng stem para maka-send sila food to the other parts of the plant. Then, for the xylem, their outer cells are not living. For phloem naman, the cells are living but need support. So when we say not living, it means na they're not doing the same function of a living organism. So si phloem naman, they are living but they need support. That is why they have what we call companion cells. So that's why they have companion cells beside them because these cells, phloem cells, need support. Okay, so to summarize it, we have this illustration here. So gina-summarize na ganyan yung cells na makita nato sa isa ka plant. So we have the simple cells, parenchyma, collenchyma, and scleren. And they have their colors na no. So yung green are usually the parenchymal cells, yung transparent or yung white are the collen, while yung red are the sclerenchymal cells. Then tong medyo pink na color is the xylem, and yung blue-green na color kay ang phloem. So ito yung si phloem, then ito si xylem. So si parenchyma, ma-divide siya into si palisade and spongy. Then we have the xylem with their structures na mas malaki ko siya compared to the phloem. Ito naman si phloem, gubot na kaya kung wait lang. So this portion is the phloem. Then itong sa tabi niya are the companion cells niya. Again, to support the phloem. While si xylem nandito naman sa kabila. Then meron siyang mga vessel elements. Meron din siyang perforation plate. Perforation plate is different from sieve plate. No? So, si perforation plate naman is medyo malaki yung gap. So, baka pass through lang ang water easily compared to the sieve plate here sa phloem. Yun. So, sa ilalim din, we have still the spongy mesophyll cells. So, yan yung mga cells na makita natin typically for a plant. So, even though there are different varieties of plants, no, sa world, but still they are made up of the same type of plant cells. Okay, so may